These are 10 moments where cycling dominance was not theoretical. It was measured in watts, gaps, and the faces of riders who had no answer. The Peloton surged at 45 km per hour. Cavendish boxed in, 15th wheel. Disunic Quickstep's lead-out ramped up to 60 km per hour, creating a narrow corridor. With 250 meters to go, Cavendish found daylight, launching a 1600-watt burst on his specialized S-Works Tarmac SL7. He crossed the line just 0.2 seconds ahead of Christopher Skierping, a gap that at those speeds meant a clear bike length. For rivals like Sam Bennett and Arnaud Demer, there was no response. Cavendish's timing and his team's orchestration left them chasing shadows. Wout van Aert's solo ride on stage 6 of the 2022 Tour de France revealed a different kind of dominance. With 18 kilometers to go, Van Aert attacked on the gravel, leaving the fractured peloton behind. The farm roads were loose and dusty, but his Cervelo R5 never faltered. He averaged over 42 kilometers per hour and held 400 watts for nearly 20 minutes, riding as if the chase group did not exist. At the finish, Van Aert's margin was 1 minute and 23 seconds, a solo breakaway that humiliated both sprinters and general classification hopefuls. On a day when most teams hesitated, Van Aert's move was both a risk and a show of endurance power. INEOS Grenadiers' display on stage 19 of the 2019 Tour de France was a masterclass in collective control. On the Col de l'Isère, the INEOS train, Castroviejo, Kwiatkowski, Van Baarle, rotated at 6 watts per kilogram, shattering the field. Thibaut Pinot and Steven Kruijswijk cracked. Egan Bernal, shielded on his Pinarello Dogma F12, launched with 3 kilometers to Tignes. He finished 2 minutes and 10 seconds ahead of Julian Alaphilippe. This was domination by attrition, a team effort that left rivals exposed and out of answers. Jumbo-Visma's assault on the Col du Granon during the 2022 Tour de France rewrote the script for mountain warfare. With 11 kilometers to the summit, the team lined up in formation, Roglič, Kuss, and Vingegaard, each taking massive turns at over 45 kilometers per hour on the lower slopes. The pace was not just aggressive, it was calculated to expose every weakness in the yellow jersey group. Roglic's relentless pulls forced Tadej Pogačar to cover every surge, draining his reserves. By the time Kuss peeled off, only Vingegaard remained with Pogačar. Vingegaard attacked with 4.5 kilometers left, holding 410 watts of normalized power and instantly opening daylight. The time gap stretched to 3 minutes and 6 seconds by the finish, a margin rarely seen at this level. Pogačar, usually the master of cycling attacks, had no answer. The team's weapon of choice was the Cervelo R5, optimized for stiffness and low weight, but the real advantage came from the collective discipline in pacing. Jumbo-Visma's approach was not just raw aggression, it was a display of professional cycling tactics at altitude, where oxygen is thin and every watt counts. 1 year later, Vingegaard's Tour de France Stage 16 time trial showed another face of cycling dominance. Over 22.4 kilometers of rolling terrain and the Côte de Domancy climb, he averaged 48.5 kilometers per hour. The numbers told the story: 410 watts of normalized power, aerodynamic position locked on the Cervelo P5, and a gap of 1 minute 38 seconds to Pogačar, the biggest margin in a Tour individual time trial in decades. The difference was not just in legs, but in execution. Every corner, every ramp, every aero tuck was measured. From the collective power of a mountain train to the solitary precision of a time trial, Jumbo-Visma's performances did not just win stages, they dismantled the myth of parity at the top of men's cycling. These were not just Tour de France highlights, they were masterclasses in cycling performance, where the gap between first and second became a chasm. The peloton hit the third ascent of the Kemmelberg, a 2-kilometer ramp averaging 8%, battered by crosswinds and echelons. With 40 kilometers remaining, Van Aert, riding a canyon aeroad, surged from a chase group at 52 kilometers per hour. He bridged solo, then detonated the pace, 430 watts at the front, forcing every rival into the red. Mathieu van der Poel and the chasers faded, the gap opening to 17 seconds by the finish. On the cobbles, Van Aert's move was not just a cycling attack, it was an erasure of hope for anyone behind him. The Belgian classics are built on moments like this, where one rider's power and timing expose every weakness in the field. Tadej Pogačar's raid on stage 9 of the 2024 Giro d'Italia brought a new kind of humiliation to the general classification. The course twisted through Lombardy, with 15% of the route on white gravel roads, an individual time trial designed to punish mistakes. Pogačar, on his Colnago V4Rs, attacked the Valgusa gravel sector with 11 kilometers to go, riding at 44 kilometers per hour and holding 390 watts. The pink jersey was already his, but he rode as if the race had just begun. By the finish, he had put a full minute into the next best rider. Rivals struggled for traction and lost time on every bend. This was not just a display of cycling performance, it was a lesson in how terrain and pacing science can turn an individual time trial into a public dismantling. The escalation reached new heights on stage 17 of the 2021 Tour de France as Pogačar targeted the Col de Rome. UAE Team Emirates set a fierce tempo and Pogačar launched with 45 kilometers to the finish. He averaged 420 watts for 20 minutes on the 8-kilometer climb, averaging 8.5%, opening a gap of more than 5 minutes on the day. The separation was visible and immediate. Vingegaard and Carapaz could only watch as the yellow jersey vanished up the mountain. At high altitude, with every breath thinner, Pogačar's pacing was both art and science. The Rome strike did not just shake up the general classification, it exposed the limits of every rival's endurance. In cycling, these moments, when a rider's power, tactics, and positioning align with the terrain, define the true meaning of cycling dominance. Jonas Vingegaard's uphill sprint on stage 7 of the 2022 Tour de France rewrote the script for cycling sprints. The finish at La Super Planche des Bellefilles was an 800-meter ramp averaging 6%, a place where pure sprinters fade and climbers gamble. Jumbo-Visma's lead-out faltered, leaving Vingegaard boxed in behind Wout van Aert and a cluster of rivals with 500 meters left. Suddenly, Vingegaard launched. The Cervelo S5 responded with a 1,450-watt burst, an effort more common in flat sprint finishes than on a mountain. In 3 seconds, he opened a gap of nearly 3 bike lengths. The clock showed a 3-second margin over Van Aert at the line, a gap that, on this terrain, was a public statement. For a moment, the usual sprint hierarchy was upended. The opportunist became the executioner, using raw power and perfect timing to humiliate the field in a setting built for climbers, not sprinters. The most decisive humiliation, though, came 2 years later, on the Plateau de Bay, stage 15 of the 2024 Tour de France. This was no last-second upset. This was a summit seal. Pogačar, riding the Pinarello Dogma F, waited until the final 6 kilometers of the 15.8-kilometer climb, where the gradient pitched to 10%. Vingegaard was on his wheel, the general classification battle balanced on a knife edge. Then, with a single acceleration, Pogačar surged to 430 watts of normalized power, sustained not just a spike. The time gap grew to 1 minute 8 seconds by the summit. In cycling performance terms, that is a chasm. The data tells the story. 40 kilometers per hour uphill, a 1-minute gap on the world's best climber, and a finishing power output that left every rival exposed. This was the apex of cycling attacks. No hesitation, no tactical games. Just overwhelming superiority, measured in watts and seconds, on the sport's grandest stage. The Plateau de Bay didn't just crown a stage winner, it closed the debate on who dominated the Tour de France general classification. The difference was visible, the humiliation absolute. Right now, cycling dominance is measured in split seconds and relentless watts on every stage, in every sprint finish. As race tactics evolve and data-driven training sharpens the margins, each attack or Tour de France highlight redefines what is possible. The next era of cycling performance begins with the gap you dare to create. Share your take below.